So there's a fabulous article that's come out of the Mirror, and remember the name of this author for when things calm down, but it's called "It's Time to Get Tough on Anti-Vaxxers and Make Them Social Pariahs." Yeah, thanks, Polly. Polly, always thought was the name of a parrot, so it's quite appropriate that she's just parroting the authoritarian line on this. And she begins, "As COVID restrictions ease, it's time to get tough on anti-vaxxers. Enough is enough. As Boris Johnson scraps restrictions to save his own skin, we need to convince everyone to get a COVID jab, and that means hitting them where it hurts." So by everyone, do they mean small babies, infants, people who are allergic to the vaccine?
I mean, why not?
Get jabbed or else. It sounds harsh, and it is, but the time has come where it's essential, because we're on our own now. What does that even mean?
I don't even know.
Boris Johnson is forcing people to pay for his career with their health and inevitably, in some cases, their lives. Now, she's being sensible by targeting Boris Johnson here, because I don't think he's got any fans left. But she has a distinctly left-wing take on it. To please his right-wingers and try to cling to power, he's dropping most COVID restrictions from tomorrow, to the alarm of the scientific and medical communities, which I'm sure she's deeply integrated in.
But I wonder, what's the obsession with the vaccination, though? Because, I mean, what are we in the UK? I think it's like 80-something% of 12 and ups have been double jabbed. Never mind the booster jab as well now. And then the argument is, well, no, that small percentage left that we haven't jabbed, that's really what the problem is. It's not affecting anyone else, just that small percent. What a weird obsession.
Yeah, it's just that small percent, and they need to be persecuted.
I mean, we've already tried removing their jobs, for example, if you work in the NHS. That's not good enough. Well, what next?
So she continues, even isolation after a positive test will apparently be scrapped by March. It's unlikely this government will bring back restrictions ever again, no matter what. Now, I wish I had the confidence that she does to say that, because our experience of this government has been, give it 5 minutes, there'll be more restrictions back. I think that's fair. The best thing we can do is to protect ourselves is to get vaccinated and boosted, she says. Then your chances of catching COVID are reduced, but even if you do, you're much less likely to be seriously ill or, crucially for society, to spread it to others. No comment. If everyone who was offered a vaccine and booster would take it, the pandemic would be effectively over in richer countries, clarifies the consistently reliable Devi Sridhar, Chair of Public Health at the University of Edinburgh. Getting vaccinated is good for us personally, and for everyone else too. It is the very clear way out. What's not to love? The Get Boosted campaign was a start, but now it needs to go a stage further. The vaccine hesitant, those who are afraid because they've genuinely fallen for untrue propaganda, need to be persuaded. The militant, rabid anti-vaxxers will never be persuaded, so they need to be forced. No excuses. Too many people who happily put meals containing who knows what chemicals into their bodies, or those who ingest recreational drugs cut with let's not even go there, have said they won't have the jab because they don't know what's in it. Unless you're a food chemist or a drug dealer, no one knows what's in anything. The vaccine has been tested and proven. Get jabbed or else. I really hate this argument. It's kind of like, yeah, we would just eat grass and sawdust if scientists and experts said so, because we don't know what's in anything. You know, we can't we don't have billions of years of evolution telling us to distinguish between edible and inedible, healthy and unhealthy. No, we have to rely on what the establishment and what this columnist at the Mirror says. French President Emmanuel Macron's strategy is to pee off the unvaccinated by making daily life more and more difficult for them. Très bien, but not far enough. The unvaccinated must become social pariahs. Unironically. They shouldn't be allowed into indoor communal spaces like restaurants, cinemas, shops, gigs, and, yup, the most bitter of all blows, pubs. Why should those of us who are jabbed and boosted have to risk breathing in their maskless air? If they don't like it, they know exactly what they can do about it. Perhaps we should even make unvaccinated patients pay for the NHS care they are statistically so much more likely to need after they're refusing their jabs. Maybe the money should go directly into the pockets of the exhausted doctors and nurses who will have to treat them. This tough love, cruel to be kind tactic really is our only option now. We've tried personal responsibility, arguing and attempting to reason with brainwashed Facebookers. Enough, get jabbed or else.
Do Do you remember when these sort of people would walk around with placards that said "the end is nigh"
Yeah.
and ring bells or whatever? And now they're getting positions in socialist newspapers such as the Mirror
Yeah.
to spout this kind of crap. I mean, the line there of just saying, "Well, if everyone got vaccinated, the pandemic would be over."
Well, that's not true.
Everyone is vaccinated. It's 80-odd%. Nothing's changed.
But there's so many things wrong with this that I don't even know where to start. But perhaps we could just take a step back and say, maybe it's a terrible idea to create an underclass in your society, the Untervaxxed, who should be persecuted in this way. And if she really feels that psychological need to persecute people, then maybe she needs to take a deep look in the mirror. And the comments on this have not been very kind. If we scroll down slightly, hateful, unnecessary, unscientific othering, says the top comment, or it did. There we go. Shame on this rag for repeatedly printing this hate speech propaganda. Yeah.
I mean, that is what the old term was meant to mean, inciting hatred towards a group.
Right.
And that's exactly what this is. So,
it's also worth mentioning that vaccination mandates are coming into effect in Germany and Austria as of February this year. The unvaccinated in Greece are already subject to regular fines of €100 per month. So it's like a tax that you have to pay to not be vaccinated. €1,200 a year.
an actual sakat.
Yeah. Quebec is also banning the unvaccinated from entering large stores unless accompanied by a health monitor. Presumably these health monitors are supposed to rugby tackle you to the floor as soon as you start to sneeze. And of course, the persecution doesn't end there. Let's go to the next one. Unvaccinated man denied heart transplant by Boston hospital.
For his health? This is for public health.
Yeah.
We're going to have you killed to save you.
For public health. A US hospital has rejected a patient for a heart transplant, at least in part because he is not vaccinated against COVID-19. DJ Ferguson, 31, is in dire need of a new heart, but Brigham and Women's Hospital in Boston took him off their list, said his father David. He said the COVID vaccine goes against his son's basic principles. He doesn't believe in it. The hospital said it was following policy. Brigham and Women's Hospital, strange name, told the BBC in a statement, "Given the shortage of available organs, we do everything we can to ensure that a patient who receives a transplanted organ has the greatest chance of survival." A spokesman said the hospital requires...
Sorry, is that a threat?
The hospital requires the COVID-19 vaccine and lifestyle behaviours for transplant candidates to create both the best chance for a successful operation and to optimise the patient's survival after transplantation, given that their immune system is drastically suppressed. The hospital added that most of the 100,000 people on wait lists for organ transplants will not receive an organ within 5 years because of the shortage of available organs. So these are a scarce commodity. Mr. Ferguson has been in hospital since last Thanksgiving weekend, 26th November 2021, and he suffers from a hereditary heart issue that causes his lungs to fill with blood and fluid, according to a GoFundMe. So it's not like he's done anything wrong to end up in hospital, you know, fighting for his life, in dire need of a heart transplant. This is a hereditary condition. And the organizer of the fundraiser said Mr. Ferguson was concerned he could experience cardiac inflammation, a potential side effect from coronavirus vaccination that the US CDC emphasizes is rare and temporary, but exists. They acknowledge that it exists, and that it might prove dangerous given the weakness of his heart. So you can understand the line of logic there. The CDC encourages transplant recipients and those in their immediate circles to get fully vaccinated and boosted. Dr. Arthur Kaplan, head of medical ethics at NYU Grossman School of Medicine, told CBS News that after any organ transplant, a patient's immune system is all but shut down, and even a common cold can prove fatal. The organs are scarce, and we are not going to distribute them to someone who has a poor chance of living when others who are vaccinated have a better chance post-surgery of surviving. So I can understand there is kind of a calculus going on there. However, if your immune system is all but shut down, how much does a vaccination really help you there? That's a question I'm asking. I don't know the answer.
I mean, he's saying a common cold could kill them anyway.
Yeah.
So what really is the difference between a vaccinated and an unvaccinated patient needing an organ? Like, give me the number. I'd like to know.
Yeah. And so this is not the only chap who's been denied because of his unvaccinated status. Again, in Virginia, again in the USA, A Virginia hospital denies unvaccinated patient spot on active kidney transplant list. Terminally ill, and he refused the vaccine on the grounds that he had already contracted COVID-19.
Which gives him greater immunity to COVID than the vaccine.
Well, that's his claim.
Well, that's, what was it, the Israelis found that as well in their studies? Mm-hmm. So he's actually got a better chance of living?
Yep. And he did the right thing, which is he recorded his call with the hospital and then gave it to Fox News. So we understand what was said. Art said, "You're not interested in the COVID vaccine," UVA Hospital's doctor said to Connors, according to a recording of the call obtained by Fox News. "So it is a requirement for you to be active." "I just had COVID, so I don't. Why would I get the vaccine?" Connors responded. However, the hospital did not budge. "You may have had Delta, and that may not protect you against the Omicron variant, which is what we're seeing now," the doctor continued. "So our policy is that in order to have people active on the transplant list and get a transplant, you need to be fully vaccinated." Connors told Fox News Digital he has been diagnosed with stage 5 focal segmental glomerulosclerosis, FSGS, a rare and dangerous condition, though he is currently at clearance or managing to maintain a sustainable use of his scarred and irreparably damaged kidney. However, due to lack of a cure, the disease is terminal. Without a transplant, Connor's kidney will eventually fail in the long term. However, he won't be eligible for a transplant until he is made active on the list. "So you're on the list, you're just not in an active status right now as we tie up all these other loose ends. So in order to be activated on the list, you will need to get the vaccine," he was warned. I find it difficult to comment on this because I think the message to take from this is pretty obvious. Like, there is such a thing as informed consent when it comes to medicine and medical procedures that are done to you. If you are compos mentis, or if you're non-compos mentis, then a guardian or someone who you designate makes the decision for you. If you are compos mentis, then you must make the decision for yourself. It's a cornerstone of medical practice that these treatments are voluntary, and yet he is being coerced into it because he's going to be denied the chance of a transplant that he needs to stay alive, based on whether he has this medical procedure or not. I think it's quite tragic.
But even when we can demonstrate the medical procedure is not as good as him having the virus.
And certainly in some perspectives that can be demonstrated. That's inarguable, yes. And of course, people do continue to lose their jobs over vaccination status. If we go to here quickly, "I lost my job for being unvaccinated." She'd worked for this bank, Citigroup, for 9 years, and they just introduced vaccine mandates all across the US and told her to pack her bags because she wouldn't have one. Again, informed consent, much? No, we don't care about that anymore. We're running around like headless chickens and we have no idea what we're doing. So will due to unvaccinated status become the new due to COVID excuse, where it just gets trotted out every now and again whenever someone wants to force some authoritarian nonsense on you? Well, let's see. At least many more people are waking up to the realities of living under COVID mandates and so on. Last weekend, there were coordinated mass protests across the world, which I believe Carl and Callum will be discussing in a premium hangout on Thursday afternoon. Is that right?
I'm not sure.
Okay. On dispatches. Sorry, I've got that wrong. The scale of these is quite impressive, though, so I encourage you to look them up under Worldwide Freedom Rally. The question is, what will it take for any government and big media to actually back down? And let's just conclude with a little discussion of the scientific literature on this question, because this is a scientific question as much as a moral and ethical one. So this is a good article out of Germany and of all places, so well done for putting your ethics hat on, from Günther Kampf. COVID-19, stigmatizing the unvaccinated is not justified.
The bare minimum.
Right. There's not.
Had to come from the German as well, didn't it? So, did you know that stigmatizing a group in civilization is not a good idea?
Well, he puts forward quite a compelling argument in this abstract. As he says here.
Again, people who have done nothing wrong. Mm-hmm. They've broken no law.
No.
Harmed no one.
No.
Okay.
He says, in the USA and Germany, high-level officials have used the term pandemic of the unvaccinated, suggesting that people who have been vaccinated are not relevant in the epidemiology of COVID-19. Officials' use of this phrase might have encouraged one scientist to claim that the unvaccinated threaten the vaccinated for COVID-19. But this view is far too simple. There is increasing evidence that vaccinated individuals continue to have a relevant role in transmission. People who are vaccinated have a lower risk of severe disease but are still a relevant part of the pandemic. It is therefore wrong and dangerous to speak of a pandemic of the unvaccinated. Historically, both the USA and Germany have engendered negative experiences by stigmatizing parts of the population for their skin color or religion. Yes, they have. They have, Gunther. I call on high-level officials and scientists to stop the inappropriate stigmatization of unvaccinated people, who include our patients, colleagues, and other fellow citizens, and to put extra effort into bringing society together.
You know what's weird about that German guilt there? Mm-hmm. During the 2016 migration crisis, in which Mama Merkel just said anyone who gets to Germany can stay here, there was a discussion, and it's mentioned on The Strange Death of Europe by Douglas Murray, in which the German Interior Minister had a discussion with Merkel about putting up some border fencing with Austria, so they could actually regulate who was coming in before she made that promise. And the decision by them was that they couldn't have images of German police officers pulling down brown men next to barbed wire, because it would look bad. That was the kind of sensitivity they have about such a thing. Mm-hmm. But when it comes to another group of society, no sensitivity whatsoever.
Well, in general, that's been the case with the German authorities, but I do want to say well done this academic for speaking out, because I can't imagine speaking out against the narrative comes without a backlash. And the article that he references here I pulled up because I think this has been quite influential. How the unvaccinated threaten the vaccinated for COVID-19. A Darwinian perspective. Oh, great. That's just what we need when we're creating a subclass of persecuted minority.
We'll bring it back to social Darwinism.
Let's talk about social Darwinism, shall we? Anyway, the world presently has the unwelcome opportunity to see the principles of evolution as enumerated by Darwin play out in real time in the interactions of the human population with SARS-CoV-2. The world could have easily skipped this unpleasant lesson had there not been such large numbers of the human population unwilling to be vaccinated against this disease.
Part of me's wondering if this is fake, because if you scroll back up, there was the name there.
Yeah.
And this is just pure coincidence, I'm sure. Just Emmanuel Goldman. Just way too close to Emmanuel Goldstein for me. But
that's true, but I think
it's probably
I looked
real,
him up.
It
is real. This proceedings of the PNAS is a well-known journal, American journal. Proceedings of the North American Academy of Science or something like that. So yeah, no, this is legit. But he's making these incredible claims here. Like, this does read a lot more like a journalistic article to me than a scientific letter, but he continues. SARS-CoV-2 has shown that it can mutate into many variants of the original agent. An unvaccinated pool of individuals provides a reservoir for the virus to continue to grow and multiply, and therefore more opportunities for such variants to emerge. When this occurs within a background of a largely vaccinated population, natural selection will favour a variant that is resistant to the vaccine. So far, and he's right, that's absolutely true. However, he has completely disregarded the possibility that people who have been vaccinated might get infected, and they might also act as a reservoir for this evolution of the virus, because that is also possible as far as I'm aware. And there are other things that he neglects here as well. So far, he continues, we have been lucky that the variants that have emerged can still be somewhat controlled by current vaccines, probably because these variants evolved in mostly unvaccinated populations and were not subject to selective pressure of having to grow in vaccinated hosts. So he seems to be arguing against vaccination in that paragraph. Nevertheless, the Delta variant is exhibiting increased frequency of breakthrough infections among the vaccinated. The real danger is a future variant, which will be the legacy of those people who are not getting vaccinated, providing a breeding ground for the virus to continue to generate variants. A variant could arise that is resistant to current vaccines, rendering those already vaccinated susceptible again. Why would this happen among the unvaccinated population rather than among the vaccinated population? Surely, if you have a breakthrough infection, then it's just as liable to mutate into something that's vaccine resistant. Anyway, progress we have made in overcoming the pandemic will be lost. New vaccines will have to be developed. Lockdowns and masks will once again be required. Many more who are currently protected, especially among the vulnerable, will die. This dire prediction need not occur if universal vaccination is adopted or mandated to protect everyone, including those who are already vaccinated. So this does not sound at all to me like a work of science. He makes some good points there and some good arguments, but the majority of what he's saying is just very selective. And particularly, there are two things he doesn't One of them, as I've mentioned before, is the probability of strains mutating in vaccinated hosts, and the other is what happens if the variants, despite being vaccine resistant, are actually less virulent. And that's what transpired, as far as we can tell, with Omicron. Finally, let's end yet again on the statistics which put the entire pandemic and the public health restrictions into perspective. This is from The Spectator here. Let's go down. So we can see the evidence here. Yep, big spike in cases for Omicron and hardly a bump on the hospitalizations. And if we scroll down further, just go through here, down to the predictions they should have there. We've just got a load of handy data, but none of it really is showing a disaster. So anyway, you can check that out in your own time. It's on The Spectator.
We've mentioned many a time.
Yes.
If you enjoyed that segment from the podcast, The Lotus Eaters, you can go to lotuseaters.com to subscribe to get access to all the premium content we have on the site, such as this video, The Politics of V for Vendetta, in which Carl and John go through the, well, anarchy versus, let's say, liberal aspects of V and the whole movie. If we go to the next one, you can also follow John on Getter at John Wheatley on Getter. Thank you and goodbye.